Hello and welcome back to the Be Free podcast. How are we doing? So as mentioned at the end of last week's episode, this week I'm wanting to speak about control, structure, routines, anxiety, and bit kind of like the pros, the pros and cons of control and how it can support us. I was earlier today thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to record about something else, but I'm going to save the something else maybe for next week. Who knows? It's a personal share, just about the journey through perimenopause, working through those hormonal changes, the transition, and also a little bit about the menstrual cycle and how we can support ourselves and honoring our cycle. And that's something I've been doing a lot of working with my cycle, cyclical living, working in alignment with nature, which is kind of really interesting actually, because I was so used before to working to a really structured routine. Okay. And I guess that's what we're gonna come on to today. So when we are experiencing anxiety, very often we will turn to certain behaviors that make us feel safe, that make us feel in control. And psychologically, we actually do need those routines and rituals and structures to feel safe. However, when we're anxious, sometimes it can kind of lead on to over control or us trying to control things that we have zero control over. And then that leads to more anxiety and more fear because we're thinking that life is out of control. Now, I know from a controlling point of view, this can lead on to things such as OCD tendencies and behaviors. And I certainly experienced that when I had really, really, really bad anxiety years ago. But we can't stop the world. We can't control the world. The world is ever changing. The world is ever evolving. And no matter how much we try and control it, that is going to happen. But what I want you to take from today is I'm going to speak to you about kind of the circle of control, the things in life that we can control, the things in life we have zero control over, and what to do about both of those things so that you can support yourself if you're experiencing, it doesn't have to just be anxiety, it could be overwhelm as well, but just if you're feeling that everything is a bit too much and out of control in your life. So I want to speak to you about, and this comes from a man called Stephen Covey, and he shares these 3 circles of control. So in the center, you have this inner circle, which is all the elements that you can control. And it is the circle of control. This is where you're situated. Then out with that, you have the circle of influence. Now, within the circle of influence, and I'll cover a bit more about each of these things are things that you can influence, but you don't have direct control over. And then the third circle, you have zero control over, okay? It's called the circle of concern or the circle of no control. So if you visualize these 3 things and, you're in the center, the things you can control, and you've maybe seen this on social media, there's quite often images and graphics and things around these things. But if you head over to the website, I've created a little image there, so you can check that out in the blog, in the show notes as well. If you want to kind of read what I've written about this as well. Okay, so when we're dealing with anxiety, as I mentioned, structure can be really, really supportive and really, really helpful. Building in repetitive routines, actions, self-care, things that are going to support you and create this lifestyle that supports you. So things like I like to consider here like non-negotiables for your health. So looking at things such as your morning routine, maybe not drinking alcohol, the food you're eating, all these different things can really, really support you getting to bed at a certain time, maybe going to your weekly yoga class or, whatever you do that supports you. And this sense of structure can be so nourishing, so supportive, and really beneficial and really, really helpful to allow your body to drop into this space of certainty. Okay, and this is what we need. We need certainty in our lives, but we also need a little bit of uncertainty so we can experience fun and joy and excitement about what's to come, or nice surprises. But what happens often is when our life becomes really uncertain, there's maybe things just happening out of the blue over and over and over and over again, and I've had a bit of a day like that myself. It can make you feel a bit wobbly and a bit wobbly and shaky. That keeps happening and your whole life feels uncertain. So having this structure can be really, really helpful. Now, when my anxiety was at its peak before, I would try and control things like, and this is what I'm saying, like the OCD. Like my husband jokes about it now because I was like a clean freak, like a control freak of cleanliness, tidiness, order. My husband said like our cupboards used to be like sleeping with the enemy, everything. Hey, that's a total thing now. Everybody loves having their cupboards organized these days. But having everything facing the right way, everything super organized, because it made me feel safe. Now, what I would say, trying to do that with 3 children was not really super, super helpful. And it led to even more anxiety and stress for me, because that was probably in that circle of influence. Okay, so yeah, I did have influence over it. I could keep my house tidy, but I also had 3 children and a husband to think about as well, into the mix, and numerous pets over the years and all those kind of things. So it wasn't 100% within my control to keep it that way. And that used to throw me for a loop sometimes. Other things like, the time that we would eat, I was really, really like, oh, we need to eat at this certain time, or, we need to get to a certain place by a certain time. We need to do this. And I used to, get really anxious, overwhelmed, upset if the routine didn't work and, things didn't go to plan, i.e. my plan. And this is the thing. So we can only control our inner circle. And I'm going to explain a bit about that today. So it's kind of fighting a bit of a lost battle there, trying to control children, timings, all those kind of things. Now, here's some things with regards to that outer circle. So the very outer circle is the circle of no control. Okay, so things that you have zero control over. It could be, a death. It could be, trying to get to the airport in time, but there's an accident and there's, tailbacks of traffic, so you can't get there in time. Or it could be, okay, I'm going to take the kids for a walk today, and there's a storm. Okay, you're not going to take your kids out in a storm. So, we can't control the weather. We can't control other people. Yes, we can influence them, but the circle of no control really is, things like laws, the weather, birth, death, like a lot of these like kind of really, really big things. So that kind of is the 3 areas of control. Now, I want to just read the little serenity prayer to you, and I want you to hold this in your heart today. And as you move forward, as you begin to process and think about, okay, what is in with my control? And I'm going to come on to some ideas for that. So with the serenity prayer says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, so accepting the things that you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and just knowing the difference. Like, so often we try to control things that are completely out with our control, or get really upset by things that are completely out with our control, and it does us no favors whatsoever. So it's a really beautiful reminder to check in with. As I say, you can read this over in the blog and have a little think about what applies to you. So thinking about what you can control. So thinking about things like your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, your reactions, your mood, how you show up, how committed you are to something. These are all things you can control. Now, anxiety is often triggered when, as I mentioned, our life can feel out of control, unsafe. So finding ways to build this in can really, really support you. Now, if you have been called a control freak, I know I have during my when my anxiety was at worst. I totally understand where you're at, and learning to let go can feel really, really challenging, difficult, but having this understanding of what you can control and what you can't will really, really support you. What I would say is meditation and mindfulness were my ultimate saviors in making peace and acceptance with what I couldn't control. And there's so many beautiful practices that will allow you, and the more you practice mindfulness and the more you practice meditation, you will become less reactive, you will become more aware of your behaviors, and then you can then implement this into your life so that you find that space of acceptance, so you're no longer fighting a lost cause, having anxiety over things that you can't control. So, you know, what kind of thoughts are you having? How are you reacting to certain situations? You know, are you happy with the way you're reacting? Are your behaviors supporting your anxiety, or are they aggravating it? You know, so thinking about the decisions you make, you have full control over the decisions you make in your life. Are you making positive decisions to support you, or are you yesing and saying yes to things that you shouldn't be, you know, saying yes to, adding things onto yourself? And, you know, take ownership, take control of the things that you can control to support yourself. So all this is kind of food for thought. And what I would say is, so just recapping on those 3 circles, and then I'm going to give you some little ideas of some things I do to support myself that I can control. But 3 circles: inner circle, your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions. This is the circle that you can control. The next circle, the circle of influence. So thinking about other people's thoughts, other people's actions, whether people like you or not, how your children behave, you know, just try, you know, you have this influence at work or whatever, but actually, you know, you don't have the ultimate final say in something. And then you have the cycle out with the circle of no control, which could be things like the weather, and you know, losing your job, or death, or traffic, or government, the economy, politics, which I guess you could say that you have some influence over, you know, depending. But, you know, just thinking about those things that are completely out with your control, the family you were born into, you know, like, maybe spiritually, depending on your spiritual belief, maybe that's not a good one. You know, we say that we pick our own families, but, you know, ultimately these things that have happened, like, they're completely out with your control. So that's those 3 circles. So the things that I like to control are things like planning my meals, laying out my clothes the night before, making sure my daughter has her clothes laid out the night before, my diet, making sure that I get enough sleep, making sure that I meditate and connect inwards each day, making sure that I spend time in nature each day, you know, using my journaling as a method of reflection of my behaviors, going to see therapists, going to see, you know, various people that can support me in processing how I'm feeling, working through beliefs, blocks, those kind of things. So, you know, those are the things that I kind of like to have in place so that I feel less overwhelmed. This past year very much has been a very different year for me. I used to have a very structured life. And the past year, I've had to learn to accept that that was out with my control, that structure was no longer working for me. And I think this can be the challenging thing for you if you struggle with anxiety and plans change and suddenly you can't do things the way you did. But meditation and mindfulness has helped me adapt to that process of being more flexible, moving into this more cyclical way of living, working with nature, working with my cycle, working with my energy, working with my moods. And I'm very fortunate and blessed that I can do that. I totally appreciate that not everybody can have that flexibility. But definitely acceptance is the key, accepting the things that you cannot control. And as I say, working through those and releasing them, forgiving yourself for being controlling, releasing those things, it's a practice and something that you need to do over and over and over and over again. So the pros and cons are there. I hope that this episode has really supported you. And any questions, please do reach out. But when you're structuring your life, when you're being intentional with your life, make sure that you're factoring the things that light you up, the things that make you feel good, the things that support you, so that your heart is full, you have opportunities to rest, to relax, to recoup. And yeah, so I am sending you so much love from my heart to yours. I cannot wait to connect with you next week. Any subjects that you want me to cover, please do reach out, and I would love to do that for you. And as I say, I'll pop the blog in the comments here. So if you want to go check out that circles, that little circles of control, you can go and do that. Or if you want to read the blog, you can do that as well. So sending you so much love from my heart to yours, wishing you an incredible week, and I will catch up with you soon. Bye.